This is the Talk CNY Economic Champions Miniseries presented by NBT Bank, a podcast by Center State CEO, Central New York's premier leadership and economic development organization. This series will shine a light on local businesses making an impact in our community and driving our regional economy forward. Whether it's new jobs, company milestones, business expansions, investments in operations, or DEI initiatives, join us as we celebrate CNY's economic champions. Today's conversation is with Sheena Solomon, Executive Director of the Gifford Foundation. Gifford is a private foundation committed to using its financial and human resources to build the capacity of individuals and organizations to enhance quality of life in our Central New York community. In Sheena's role as Executive Director, she remains fully committed and engaged in racial justice, equity, and inclusion work. Beyond Gifford, Sheena dedicates her time in service to local and national boards, such as the Syracuse Economic Development Corporation, the Urban Minority Economic Association, the Near West Side Initiative, the Funders Network, Empire State Development Council, and the M&T Directors Advisory Council. Today, we are here with Sheena Solomon, Executive Director of the Gifford Foundation. Sheena, thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you for having me.
Yay, awesome. Okay, so first, we're going to learn all about you, get to know you a bit, and then we'll hear more about the organization. So first of all, what is your tie to Central New York?
So I've been here in Central New York since 1995. I actually came here to go to Bryant and Stratton. I know most people came here to go to SU or Lemoyne and things like that, but I came here to go to Bryant and Stratton, and I ended up loving it and staying here and finding it to be a really great space to raise my children. At the time, I just had one child, and I just wanted to bring him into a more diverse area where he could see more people who look like him.
Yeah.
And I ended up raising 3 children here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Are there some things about Central New York that you particularly enjoy? I know you mentioned the diversity.
Well, Syracuse in particular, I like the fact that it's just enough city. You can get a city feel, but if you want some country or you want to see a cow or a horse, all you have to do is drive like maybe 10 minutes, right? To see a farm, to go to a winery, a whole bunch of green space. We have beautiful parks. So just really a real diversity as far as people and environment. So,
Yes.
And that's what keeps me here. I love the 4 seasons. Winter definitely lasts a little too long, but I feel like that's getting better.
Yeah, for better or worse,
Right.
it is it is a little warmer. Oh my goodness. Yes. Okay, so now you have this incredible role. How did we get to it? How did you end up taking this road from Bryant and Stratton to Executive Director of Gifford?
Well, that is really interesting.
Yeah.
So I went to school for administration. And when I started working, I've always kind of worked in nonprofits. I've worked at United Way, I've worked at OCC. And my other longest job was home headquarters. And working at home headquarters, I had a lot of interaction with community. So working with community members, teaching them how to get through the home headquarters process. I'm working with contractors and helping people like how to get home improvement loans for their home and things like that. And when someone comes to talk to you about what's going on at their home, that's not usually the only thing that's happening in their life. So I would find out things that was happening in the community, around in their lives, with their spouses, what's happening in the neighborhood, and I really got a community feel. And I started to interact with a gentleman, his name was Brian Moore. He was coming to home headquarters for the classes, and he's like, have you ever thought about getting into philanthropy? And I'm like, well, I know that we received grants from the Gifford Foundation, but I don't really know what else they do. So they end up having 2 openings at the Gifford Foundation, so I applied. One was administrative assistant and one was a program associate. Administrative assistant, I had that down packed, but program associate, didn't really know what that person did. But when I did the interview, they hired me for the program associate position, and that was 17 years ago. Sitting in that position, looking at proposals, talking to nonprofits, and not really being in a space where your opinion mattered was different for me at the Gifford Foundation. Because I'm like, why do you want my opinion on this proposal? And they really appreciated my grassroots approach, my relationship with community. and the different walk of life that I came from than everyone else. So a lot of people don't know that I was a teenage mom. I was pregnant in 10th grade and had a baby when I turned 16. And that is not a road that I would ever suggest anybody to take. However, it has really helped build me to be the person that I am today, because not many people in my role could actually say they've used the services that I now fund. And so being at the Gifford Foundation, I just learned so much from Kathy Goldfarb-Finley and then Dirk Sonneborn. And I pretty much worked my way up in the ranks of the organization to become the executive director. And I've been in this role now for almost 7 years.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, such an awesome story, and not one that you necessarily hear all the time, like to move up in that way within an organization. So in that process, as you were thinking ahead and thinking, oh, okay, like, what about a leadership element here and moving into a position like that? Did you foresee this? Is this something that you had aspired to do? Or was it, again, someone else kind of suggesting, like, hey, we think you should try this out?
You know, one funny thing about leadership is that some people are born with it and some people are like just pushed into it, right? Or trained for it in some way. And I feel like mine's is a mixture of all of it. I've always been a servant to community. Even when I was younger, my mom recalled me going to Sunday school and my aunt would, the church wasn't big enough for us to have a Sunday school class. So we'd have Sunday school in a van. And instead of just sitting in a van, we'd go and visit a shut-in. And we'd go to jails and talk to people. And so I've always been a person that wanted to give back to the community in some way, just by nature. And not because anybody told me to, because it just felt like the right thing to do, I guess. So being with Gifford and seeing what we're able to do, not just with funding, but with providing advice, being a convener in the community, being a partner in the community, just really falls right in my wheelhouse. So wanting to lead it was never an option until one day Dirk Sonneborn said to me, you know, you're a director of neighborhood initiatives. The organization's kind of flat. There's not too many more places for it to go. And he said, like, where would you ever want my job? And I said, well, why not? Right? You know, well, why not? Why can't I do what you do? You know? And so him and I started working on that. What does it look like? What do I need to have underneath my belt? What type of tables do I need to sit at? And I found that the one thing that I didn't necessarily have was like this executive presence that some people are just born with. Just being able to walk in the room and people being like, oh, that person is here, you know? Like the Rob Simpsons of the world and Dirk Sonneborn. And the way the mayor just walks in a room and you're like, wow, that's the mayor, right? Just trying to learn that. I stopped trying to learn that and was just like, I'm just going to be myself. And it worked out. I think we all kind of have that sense of, or a point in time where we're like, do we need to embody some kind of character in order to show up effectively? But I love that realization of maybe what's most effective is to just be your authentic self and show up that way and see what happens and trust it. Well, because imposter syndrome is real. It's right? Real. And what I learned through coaching process with Wynweber McLeod is that most of the time you don't actually have imposter syndrome. People treat you like you're an imposter because you're not supposed to be in the role that you're in, right? So I'm... Yes. Right? Thank you for actually calling that out. Okay, yeah, because I'm unexpected, right? People don't expect a Black woman to be running a foundation. In the foundation world, we're less than 2% of the leadership in the foundation world. And before Melanie Littlejohn was hired at Community Foundation, this year in 2020, I was the only Black woman in upstate New York that ran a foundation. That is just mind-boggling. It's sad. Yes. So the spaces that I walk in, when you walk into spaces and you don't see other people who look like you, makes it a little bit more difficult if you don't have that confidence of saying, I deserve to be here just like everyone else. Yeah, I really appreciate you stating that. You know, it's something that maybe, you know, for anybody who's listening, maybe they've considered that or realized that,
maybe not, maybe not. So to just bring it into the foreground and point at it and say like, hey, this is real. Like, let's pay attention to this. This is real. And for anyone maybe who's listening and thinking about what that could mean for themselves and how, what they can envision for themselves in their career, in the stretch of their career, or how they might walk into that next conference or whatever. So thank you so much for saying that. Yeah. Sheena, could you provide a little clarity around what makes a philanthropy what it is as opposed to just nonprofits in general? I think sometimes we use these words interchangeably, and why not go ahead and provide that clarity around it? Yes.
Yeah, well, because there's a difference between philanthropy and charity, right?
Say more, please.
Right.
Yes.
So the difference between the two is philanthropic organizations. There's a lot of organizations that have the name foundation on the end of them, right? But they don't all give out funding. So say the Gifford Foundation, the Allen Foundation, Central New York Community Foundation, the John Ben Snow Foundation. They're all foundations who give out funds. Majority of them live off of the stock market, or they had some type of family fund like the Allen Foundation does, or like the Community Foundation, they have donor and they have donor advised funds. Gifford is what you would call a private foundation because we completely live off the stock market. We don't have any family on the board and we have no donors. So economics means a lot to us, right?
Oh, that's so
because
interesting.
whether or not the stock market does well or not depends on what my budget is going to look like the next year, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Something that you can't really worry about because you can't control. But then there's...
Wait, hold on a second. You can't worry about it because you can't control it. Let's all just internalize that for a minute.
When
Okay.
somebody's like, what keeps you up at night? I'm like, well, it can't be the stock market. I can't do anything about it.
True.
Right? I can't do anything about it. So,
But wisdom also.
right.
Yes.
Right. I can't control it. So there's no why worry about it. Right.
Yeah.
And that's why we find other ways to assist organizations beyond money. Right? Because it's not just all about the money. Because if money could fix everything, our communities wouldn't look the way that they look right now. At the end of the day, if we had all the money in the world. So then there's charity, right? And charity is more like your nonprofits like Peace Incorporated, Catholic Charities, the Red House, the Red Cross, those types of organizations that provide a direct service, right? They provide a direct service, whether they're feeding people, housing people, providing programming to help people to become more efficient. We fund those things. So unlike, let's say, the Krause Health Foundation, that foundation specifically raises money for Krause. They don't give out money to Peace Incorporated or Catholic Charities. So there's a specific difference there. So that's the difference between. And foundations, what we try to do is provide an investment. And what Gifford specifically does is provide an investment in capacity building. So at the not so sexy things that organizations don't necessarily think about, like systems, succession planning, diversifying funding streams, board development, staff development, consulting to help with strategic planning, to help organizations realize where they are so that they can get where they need to be. We use the nonprofit community as a conduit to serve the community.
Interesting. Huh. Okay, this is actually a great education. I'm sure many people listening are really appreciating it, seriously, because, we really do. We use these words and we don't necessarily understand them fully. And then even sometimes, like as you described, a foundation doesn't necessarily operate in the same way. Those funds aren't necessarily available outside the entity. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's awesome to just get a better grip on a thing. So let's hear more about what that means, because you talked about having a smaller staff, and we don't necessarily know what's going to happen with that cash flow because we're depending on the market. Things could go in any direction. So what really does that look like then for someone who is benefiting from the Gifford Foundation?
So basically what we try to do is to be transparent with organizations. We are transparent about our budget, how much funds that we're able to give up front, and the type of things that we try to fund. We're very upfront about those things. COVID impacted people significantly in 2020. That's probably the lowest I've ever seen the Gifford Foundation endowment be. And what the attempt was to, let's pause grant making and let's let the stock market figure itself out. But as the leader of the organization, I felt some kind of way about that because I felt like the city was on fire and we're firefighters and we were preserving our water.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we tried to find ways where we could still support people and maybe not large grants, but can we purchase the plastic things that you need to separate your staff? Can we get you the mask that you might need? Like things that are not extremely costly, but organizations didn't have
Totally.
this stuff in their budget, right? Or how can we help you with your IT so your staff can work from home? So just figuring out those types of things that still are impactful, but you don't need a $1 billion to do.
Well, and extremely impactful because it could make the difference between being able to do business or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I'm really blessed in a way and fortunate that the Gifford Foundation board sees our team of staff as a grant to the community. Because we do go out in community quite a bit. We go and speak in community, we teach workshops, we go and visit spaces, we go to events and represent the foundation, we go to community events, block parties, all types of things. So we give our talent to the community as well.
Awesome. And if someone is listening, maybe they're a business owner and they're thinking, okay, I, for whatever reason, have not yet interacted with Gifford. How might that look? Or like what types of workshops or how might I get involved?
I would say for most nonprofits know who we are because you don't really have to market when you give out money, Kate, right? Like if you're giving out money, people are going to hear about it real fast, right?
Sure.
But the for-profit world and the way that we interact with them is that a lot of them want to give back to community, but are not sure, like, what agency should I interact with? Or do you have a recommendation? Or my staff wants to become a board member. What does that look like? So we have a program called Nourishing Tomorrow's Leader, where we teach individuals in the community on why it's important to be a board member, how to become a board member, and how to be an effective board member. And we created that program to increase diversity and inclusion on nonprofit boards, because what we found was those boards didn't reflect the community that they serve. So we tried to help fix that issue. And so far we've graduated over 250 people in the community. And we have a lot of interaction with for-profits through that. That's like, oh, wow, like with great reputation with NBT Bank, who we have NTL at M&T, teaching their team there on how to give back to community so that their staff can then serve the community in that way.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. I mean, coming into serving on a board for a first time, let's say, you really may not have any idea how you can be a resource, or you might have some preconceived notion about, oh, maybe this means, I attend the meeting and I donate X amount of dollars or something, but how can you really, show up and have some utility there and also, like being mindful about who's in the room and what does that look like then. So that's really cool. I bet you have a lot of recruitment from the people who go through this program.
Yeah. We actually have a page on our website where a few years ago we started doing headshots for the participants and doing bios for the participants. So really, the things that we teach them, they can take to a board, they can take back to work, they can use it at home because group dynamics happen at home at the kitchen table, right? Conflict resolution happen at home at the kitchen table. Having a conversation about diversity is very important, like all of those things, right? So all the things that we teach them, they can take wherever they want to go. And you should be informed before becoming a board member because it's a much larger responsibility than a lot of people imagine it to be. And there's a lot of perceptions around boardsmanship.
Yes. So we're just uncovering, I'm saying we like I'm helping, I'm not. But you're uncovering that, right? And so people are able to then show up and be effective and feel good about how they're going to be engaging and boards are probably receiving this really well. I bet you're getting a lot of really great feedback about that.
Yeah, the boards are loving it and the individuals are appreciating having a resource, a place where they can go and come back to Gifford and have a conversation and say, well, we're having trouble with this specific thing. How can you help? So just really being in a partner of building a capacity of individuals in the community because they're all leaders. Some of them just need a little bit of push. That's all.
Yeah. And You said nonprofits who are established in this community know Gifford. Okay, for sure. But let's think of someone who is just starting to get a nonprofit off the ground and just starting to figure out which foundations lean in which directions, what sort of interests do you have. Can you talk a little bit about what you look for when you think about who you might partner with or help? And maybe even I'm thinking, I do some adjuncting work up on the Hill at SU, and I think about students who try to put something off the ground. What might draw them into Gifford from that perspective, a new nonprofit?
So what would draw them to Gifford is because that's our niche right there. New nonprofits, we don't recommend anybody go out and continue starting them. We suggest you do your homework and see who's serving the population that you want to serve and possibly partner. But if it doesn't exist and you want to pilot and try it out, we love stuff like that. We love it. We have a mini grant program at Gifford where you actually don't have to be a 501c3 to try out a project. Residents in the community have to live in the city of Syracuse, be a resident in the community with an idea. We help you flesh out your idea, and you can receive up to $5,000 to implement it. You tell us what you want to do, how you plan to spend the money, and we can find you a fiscal sponsor for the money to go through, because we can't give funds to individuals, so we have to find a fiscal sponsor for that. But we do a lot of that, I have this idea, this is missing in community, and what I have found is that grassroots organizations have the ability to reach the people that our very large entities don't have the ability to do, because they don't come outside as often. They don't go to the churches and the barbershops and the schools where the people who actually need their help reside. But grassroots individuals already have those built-in relationships. So then people are not intimidated to come and say, you know what, Kate, I really want to try this, because they know you or they heard about you through someone else, instead of being like, okay, I got to make an appointment with this nonprofit and I got to go there and I got to bring all this paperwork and I might receive help and I might not,
Yeah, I like that you're pointing out sort of the difference between, I think that this community could benefit from this versus, no, I'm like right here in this community and I know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The thought process is people in community can be involved in their own rescue, right? They can participate in it and they can lead it. Because when other people come in with a savior complex, right, to help people in community, that's not sustainable. So after you leave, then what happens to that particular community? So teaching people how to fish is our motto.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Awesome. The mini grants are just such a well-known feature, too. I love that this came up.
Yeah, actually, the mini grants is one of our staple programs that we developed in 2011, because we was doing a lot of work in neighborhood in general, specifically on the south side and the west side. And I just had a question, for the Gifford staff, like, why are we just in these two neighborhoods? The city's not that big. Why aren't we helping the whole city? And then we came up with the mini grant program specifically for the city of Syracuse. And it's really helped level that playing field. We've even developed the resident review committee, where if you've gone through the mini grant program, you've completed your project, then we offer you the opportunity to review applications and proposals in the future.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yes. So they come together, they read applications and proposals, and they give us recommendations on whether or not we should fund it or not. And it really puts them on the other side of the railroad track to really see that this job isn't as easy as it sounds.
Yeah.
Because the need is so much greater than the funds that we have. So you really have to make decisions about what to fund, what should be priority, does this make sense, do they have community partners, is this a solo type of project? And I think some of the residents are actually harder on the proposals than me and my staff are. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that, especially having gone through a process and perhaps along the way, that former recipient realized what more it was going to take to make the thing happen. And so having faced those obstacles, are now looking at those more critically and thinking like, well, this person might not realize that they're going to have to do X, Y, and Z.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Interesting.
we love having the resident review committee, and we do our best to show them as much appreciation. But they're all community residents that live right here in the city of Syracuse, all different sides, all ages. So it's really a great experience for them and us.
Yeah, and just to keep it going, keep that relationship going.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, Gifford is obviously part of a much larger whole when it comes to nonprofits, and something we always emphasize and are looking at is what is the economic impact? And you actually, before we started recording, brought to our attention this idea of how do nonprofits play a role within that? So please share thoughts. We'd love to hear them.
Yeah, so when I think about economic impact, a lot of times you think about the for-profit community, right?
Totally.
And nonprofit is just a tax status, right? Where they can make a profit, they just can't go buy a yacht with it, right? They have to put those funds back into programming. That is the real difference, in all honesty. But when we look at the makeup, the ecosystem of our community here in Syracuse, our largest two employers are nonprofits, and at Syracuse University and Upstate Medical, right? They hire thousands of people. So when we have found that, particularly when we're talking about our Nourishing Tomorrow's Leaders program, we're like, so many people in this class are from nonprofit, and it's because we have so many nonprofits that hire people in our community. So I think that those economics are really important, and that we don't think about that when we're investing in economic development. We're not thinking about how nonprofit plays in this, right? So the big news is that Micron is coming, right? And we've been having lots of parades about it, right? Micron is coming. This is great. But we need to have a conversation on how we're going to serve the people that come here from Micron. They're going to need health care. They're going to need housing. They're going to need all of these other things that the nonprofit community is providing that doesn't necessarily have the capacity to have the population be increased by like 100,000 more people, right? Because they already have waiting lists for everything, and people are already hungry. So how can we fix our economic systems to where we're including nonprofits, and actually it's not just funders and the government investing in nonprofit, but corporations start to invest in nonprofits as well, because nonprofits serve the people that they hire.
Totally. As we see some evidence, and maybe we're reading articles about how Micron might be doing that in the community, there's more and more curiosity from the business owner's perspective of how might I engage like this? So can you give some thoughts about what that could look like?
So what it would look like for people to engage more around it?
Yeah, if it's a newer idea for them, because not all businesses are engaged in this way at this time. So
you're
if someone's
right.
interested and curious, what might be a step to take?
Through Micron and Empire State Development, they developed a community engagement committee. And I was on that committee, and we designed a priorities plan. And that priorities plan actually lists out all the things that we believe is going to bubble up to the top, right? So we need to take a look at our education system. We need to take a look at healthcare. We need to look at daycare, right?
Oh, goodness, yes.
Right, because kids need someplace to go before they go to school. We need to look at that healthcare system piece. And then we also need to make sure, because such a large corporation is coming, that we don't forget about our entrepreneurs and our MWBs and our MVWBEs, right? Like, we can't forget the small business owner, because small business creates community, right? So that document, I think, is a really great start to learn about some of the issues and some possible solutions, and who's working on housing, who's working on education. So first, educate yourself on it, and then maybe engage with some of the nonprofits that are leading the work, just to learn how they lead the work. Do you need any assistance needing the work? I feel like it's very rare that someone goes to the Red Cross and says, what do you need? Right? What do you need?
Yeah.
Most people will come and give blood if there's a blood drive, right?
Yeah.
But it's very rare that you're like, you know what? I'm going to go give blood today. Right? Or
True.
I'm going to go ask them what they might need today. So just having that particular type of conversation, because I feel like for-profit and not-for-profit can help each other, because nonprofit has issues just like for-profit with retention. After COVID, people don't necessarily want to go back into the office, and they might be able to learn from each other on how to solve some of those issues.
Oh, excellent point. Okay. So maybe this can be a good takeaway then for today's episode for listeners, that maybe instead of just writing that annual check and making your donation and having some affiliation in that sense as a, private entity, maybe you start seeking out these organizations and asking those types of questions. How can we show up better?
Right.
Yeah.
How can we show up better? Because
What do you need? Or is that what you said? What do you need?
Right. What do you need?
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like you don't know what you don't know. Right? And people writing a check is fine. Right? But sometimes just listening is even better. Or there might be a skill or something that you have that would actually be more beneficial than just writing a check. Right? So I would never say not to give, right? Still give, because nonprofits need that.
Right.
But they also need volunteers. They also they would love for you to listen to what some of their issues might be as well. That they might need a donation of computers, or, corporations rotate their computers so often.
Yeah.
I was just at M&T not too long ago, and they're like, we're going to be rotating our computers. I'm like, well, what are you doing with those computers?
Where are we rotating them to?
Right. You're bringing in some new stuff. They're only like 2-3 years old.
Right.
Like, another organization could definitely, especially like a startup, the technology is not cheap.
Yeah. Oh, what a good example. Because, hopefully someone's listening and that can feel like, oh, maybe something very realistic and simple could be possible here.
Yeah.
It might not even be that complicated.
Yeah, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit.
All right, awesome. Well, what a positive note to end the conversation on. Before we let you go, would you just share with listeners how they can find you and how they can find Gifford?
I am so easy to find. So Gifford has a website, and it's just giffordfoundation.org. We also have Gifford Foundation on Instagram, Gifford Foundation on Facebook as well.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you.
And I'm
so
on
much.
LinkedIn.
Oh, and she's on LinkedIn. All right,
Yes.
perfect. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for the invite. It's been a joy.
Thank you for tuning in to the Talk CNY Economic Champions Miniseries, presented by NBT Bank. Episodes of this Center State CEO podcast are available on clickcny.com and all major podcast platforms. After each episode, you can join us on Click, where we'll continue to talk about this topic and provide additional resources and links. In Click, you can listen to or watch every episode of Talk CNY. Click is Center State CEO's digital chamber platform where our members connect, learn, and receive support from our staff. For new episode reminders, be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast listening app. If you are enjoying our series, consider leaving a quick review or a 5-star rating.
I would recommend NBT Bank to any business. My name is Chris Palomino, and I'm the president of Atlas Fence.
Chris had decided to purchase Atlas Fence from the previous owner. He had previous connections at NBT Bank.
NBT Bank provided me equipment financing, doubling our entire production workforce. It's important to me as a business owner that the decisions of our banking relationship are made locally.